I spent a lot of time after cricket finished trying to figure out how I felt about it, because in many ways it was a period of my life that has shaped me forever. In some other ways there was an awful lot of pain, I guess. It's not easy being in a dressing room as a young player surrounded by players, who you respect and who are respected in the game in that way.
I mean, Rishabh Pant wouldn't exist if it wasn't for the IPL.
For me, Alan Stanford was the best thing that happened to West Indies cricket. As a result of the Indian Premier League primarily, but then also the emergence of these other T20 leagues, is that it's changed Test cricket. Test cricket is a different product now than it was pre-IPL. So should that translate into from Indian Premier League into Indian Test cricket, and therefore from CPL into West Indian Test cricket? Absolutely should. But again, someone's got to make smart long-term decisions about the best interests of the game in the West Indies in order for that to happen. Right? We may have to come to terms with the fact that we won't have a West Indies cricket team playing international Test cricket anymore.
Welcome to another episode of Close It Play with me, Sanjay Murthy. I'm joined today by a man who fell in and out of love with the game of cricket. He played first-class cricket for Leicestershire, then some minor county stuff, and was part of the Leicestershire side that won the 2004 T20 competition. He then became the editor of the short-lived Middle East Cricket magazine. Welcome to the show, Damian Brandy. How are you, mate?
I'm good, thanks, mate. Thanks for the intro. Wow,
Yeah,
it feels like a lifetime ago. Yeah, all accurate, unfortunately, a lot of it, and not particularly positive, but things have looked up since then. So
yeah, I mean, again, we've known each other. I say this quite a lot on the show. I've known you a long time. When did you first move to Dubai?
I moved in 2008.
Okay, fine. So that was Middle East Cricket magazine days, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So let's just go rewind a little bit for your career. What was it like? I mean, growing up and playing in a Leicestershire side that had people who'd played for England, Phil de Freitas, I think Jeremy Snape, those sort of type of guys played at the time. What was it like being a young player in that environment?
Look, I spent a lot of time reflecting on that after cricket finished, trying to figure out how I felt about it, because in many ways it was a period of my life that has shaped me forever. In some other ways there was an awful lot of pain, I guess. It's not easy being in a dressing room as a young player surrounded by players, who you respect and who are respected in the game in that way. I think the first thing that I felt was, it's very clear that when you walk into a team, despite the fact that you're all pushing for the same result, you're not necessarily all looking out for each other, right? And I think that's a natural dynamic in a team. I don't think I had the resilience that I needed at that age. But to sit back now and say that I was able to share a dressing room with, Phil de Freitas, Devon Malcolm, Brad Hodge, as you say, Jeremy Snape, some Verinder Sehwag, these are players that it will be remembering and talking about well into the future. And I had the privilege of sharing a dressing room with them. So in from that perspective, it was incredible.
Was Otis Gibson in that side as well?
Otis Gibson was in that side. What was funny was that it seemed to be a dressing room full of big personalities, right? And I wasn't one of them. Always been slightly more on the quiet side, never really wanted to sort of dominate a space. But in the Leicester dressing room, we had big personalities, guys who were respected in the game, wanting to make sure their views were heard. And so that did create what felt like, it was almost like a sort of Battle of the Giants type environment, right? It was like Greek gods with each other warring, and you're just a mere mortal looking up into the sky and seeing these people go at it. And again, natural in a sporting environment that people, there would be some tension and some friction, particularly in an environment like Leicester, where we weren't a fancied club, but seemed to punch above our weight an awful lot. And we got there because of the strength of personalities and the quality of cricket. So,
I mean, it seems, for people like us, it wasn't that long ago, but I think it probably was, it was 20 years plus. And obviously mental health and player care has come on a long way since those days. And do you feel that if you had played in today's environment, you may have thrived more? So, not to put, to demean anything you did. I mean, you played first class, played at Lords, you played with those great players. But do you think that if mental health was what it was then, what it is today, then you'd have thrived a bit more?
yeah, I don't know if I even knew what mental health meant back in those days. So that's an illustration of how far the world's come, right? Um, I think I would have done better now for a number of reasons. I think my game was naturally more suited to the shorter formats, honestly. So I finished playing cricket just as T20 cricket was coming in. I'd underestimated for a long time, um, you know, the what I could offer a team in the short format, because I'd always been focused on being a Test cricketer, right? Got to play Championship cricket, got to go on and play Test cricket. And in some ways, there are a different set of skills necessary to be successful in the short format of the game. So I think not only from a culture point of view, but also from a skills point of view, I probably would have done
Hmm.
slightly better had I emerged 3 or 4 years later, or just
Hmm.
hung in, right? If I could have just hung on to a contract for a couple more years, it might have clicked. My coach always said that if you could make it to 25, 26, you'll be a good cricketer. But until then, it might be a struggle.
It's going to be a tough old ask.
Yeah.
Thank you for all of your support for the work that we do here at Close of Play. But to help us, if you could subscribe to Close of Play on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and also at Sanjay Murthy Cricket on YouTube, it will help us. We can get more content out there, get more guests, and keep bringing you our, let's hope, unique views on the game that we all love. Thank you very much. Life moves on, right? Society moves on, culture and and the structure of the game is a lot different, as you said, from when it was when you played. And as I said to you before, the thrust of what I wanted to talk about with you was West Indies cricket, because when you were at the editor at Middle East Cricket, I'd written an article for you, and I think it was why I was putting the argument forward as to why the world needed a strong West Indies team, or cricket needed a strong West Indies team. I don't think that's true anymore. I don't think the world does need a strong West Indies team for a number of reasons. But do you think that the rise and then the fall, and hopefully it's plateaued out at the bottom now, the West Indies cricket, is down to things like culture and structure, or do you think there are more fundamental underlying problems that the West Indies Cricket Board is not dealing with?
As with many things, there are a whole host of issues. Just from my vantage point, looking in, and I played the game a bit, have a very strong interest in West Indian cricket, given my background. But and by no means an expert in what's going on. But just, I think there's been excuses made for a long time in the West Indies, and maybe just in cricketing circles, about the fact that the increased exposure to American sport and all of these other external factors are reasons for the decline of West Indian cricket. Those things are easy to say and almost quite easy to buy, but the reality for me is that what made the West Indies successful in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and early part of the 90s were a set of factors that no longer exist. And therefore, if you are going to be a good Test cricket team, international cricket team in the 2000s, 2010s, and 2020s, it's a different set of factors that has to define your success. And I'm not sure the West Indies ever made that transition. For me, it's evident in the fact that every time there's a problem, we go back to finding, one of the legends from the 70s to fix it. Right? So I don't think we're moving forward at all. That's not to say that the legends from the 70s don't have a voice in the discussion. These are guys that the sport will hold up in lights for decades to come. But I think international sport has moved on a long way in the last 30 or 40 years, and West Indian cricket has been left behind.
Those legends that have popped up recently with a voice, so Lara, I think, Viv Richards, and who there's one more, Clive Lloyd. Yeah, but they have been there in the background for all of that time that West Indies cricket has plummeted further and further. Why do you think now they've come up and said, right, now's the time for us to say something?
I'm not sure. I mean, look, you're right. Clive Lloyd has been involved in West Indies cricket on and off in various different roles for 20 years. I think it's always been evident to all of them that there was a problem. Maybe there's an element of denial because you think it's just a blip and we've got to go through this period, as with any cycle, of kind of rebuilding the team. And naturally, at some stage, a star will emerge that will save us from, this nadir, which is ultimately what they've been going through for me for the last 20 years. And that person's never arrived. Or if they have arrived, they haven't been good enough to lift an entire team and an entire cricketing region out of its doldrums. So it feels to me like what happened against Australia was a sign that we've been burying our heads in the sand about the underlying fundamental issues with cricket in this region. And now they have to recognise them.
Yeah, I mean, you can, with Clive Lloyd and those guys, Michael Holding, Andy Roberts, all playing in the World Series back in the late 70s. And they did that for money, ultimately. And that's no different. So that was like 1978, 79. So what are we talking, 40 years later, pretty much 35, 40 years later. That hasn't changed. So does that mean then that, and we'll come to the CPL in a minute, because that probably has got a role to play in the future of West Indies cricket. But do you think that therefore in that interim period, the monies that they've derived, which probably isn't as much as the other countries, that's fair, hasn't been used to develop West Indies cricket as well as it should have done? Because, Clive Lloyd and those guys went to play, for money back in the 70s, and it's still happening now.
Yeah, look, I think players going to play for money has never and will never change. I think the West Indies, whether they're a really successful team or are a, mid-ranking test team, will probably never be able to afford to play their international cricketers the amount that Indian cricketers earn, for instance, right? So I think, the best West Indian players playing their trade in leagues around the world should be supplementary, in an ideal world, a bit like you see from other nations, supplementary to the efforts that those players are making to play for their country.
Yeah.
Now what we're seeing is, I think, those players feeling as though, because of the lack of continuity, lack of structure, lack of hope in West Indian cricket, I no longer feel the need to take all the skills I'm developing around the world and offset the money that I'm earning internationally by giving up my time to create some renewed sense of pride in playing for the West Indies, and also personal pride, because obviously it's one thing going around the world earning money playing in T20 leagues, but if you're a player of repute, you really want to be able to compare yourself to other similar players down the ages, and you can't do that without playing international cricket.
Do you think the forced unity is the problem, or one of the problems? I.e., if they were playing for Jamaica or Barbados as individual countries where there may be more pride, that you wouldn't have this situation as much as it exists today?
I think some of these issues are marginal, really. There are fundamental issues for me in West Indian cricket.
Which
I'm
are?
happy to sort of share my views on them. But these other fringe issues, I think, are just things that are bounded around as excuses and reasons to say that actually we haven't done anything wrong as a board or as a series of administrations, we've done nothing wrong because we're separate countries, so we were never going to be that great. Oh well, kids are playing basketball now, so we can't do anything as a West Indies cricket board. Not true. For me, it becomes really simple. This is the way my mind works with most problems, and again, by no means trying to position myself as being an expert in this or generally in problem solving, but you have to keep asking why, right? Even after the first couple of responses to that question, why, you have to persist. And when you boil the West Indian cricket problems down to their essence, for me, money is part of it, but the question is, what would you do with the money? Okay. Right? And
from a board level or from a player level?
From a board level. If West Indian cricket had millions in the bank, what would it be doing with that money to make sure that it was producing, consistently successful cricket teams for the foreseeable future? And so I think when I look at West Indian cricket, and it occurred to me when I was watching the series against Australia, I didn't watch lots of it, but a fair bit of it, and I was almost more embarrassed by the quality of the pitches than of the quality of the cricket on show from the West Indies.
Yeah.
And if you're a batsman, which I professed to be back in the day, if you're a batter and you grow up playing cricket on wickets that you can't trust, there is actually no point in cultivating proper technique, because at some point a ball's going to have your name on it.
What was the England one? 57 all out, 59 that one? When was that?
Yeah, it was 47 all out at Trinidad, I think it was. Yeah, I remember watching that or listening to it with my granddad back in those days. So, and that was that wasn't a bad pitch. That was just terrible batting from England. There have been bad pitches in the West Indies before, though. We've seen abandoned Test matches in the West Indies, right?
Yeah.
They should have been warning signs 15 years ago about the quality of groundsmanship and preparation of wickets in the West Indies from then, and it doesn't seem as though there has been. So what you do by playing cricket on bad wickets is you teach batsmen bad habits, including an inability to build an innings, to occupy a crease for 4, 5, 6 hours, bat for a day. So batsmen don't grow up learning how to do that, simply because the likelihood of them being able to pull that off, even if they were, the West Indian Don Bradman, is very low on a wicket where all sorts is going on. The other thing it does is it flatters bowling. Now, somehow the West Indies seem, despite that, to be able to produce young cricketers with promise.
Yeah, and
particularly on the bowling side. Yeah, and continue to do so, right? So, exactly. And to the points we made earlier, you wouldn't continue to produce cricketers that show the level of promise that West Indian cricketers have shown if those other factors were real. If basketball or baseball or American football was dragging kids away, right? What you're failing to do is be able to take that talent from the level of promise to consistent performance. And for me, the gap is, and honestly, I'm definitely oversimplifying the problem, but I'm almost certain it would make a difference, a sustainable long-term difference to West Indian cricket if this problem was fixed tomorrow. You need to invest in high quality cricket wickets across first class and one-day cricket, domestic one-day cricket in the West Indies. It won't make an immediate difference because you're still giving those you're still having kids who've been brought up on, on terrible wickets, playing on great wickets and potentially flattering themselves. But 7, 8, 9, 10 years down the line, you almost got to sacrifice the next decade and say, we know what we need to do. And we're letting the West Indian and the international cricket community know that it's going to get a bit worse before it gets better, but we expect to see, some positive results 10 years down the line.
Do you think there's a desire from the young West Indian batters and bowlers who are coming through to want to play, they want to play Test cricket, want to play the longer format, because there runs a risk, I suppose, of investment in facilities, better pitches and whatever, and yet the players go off and play in the multitude of franchise leagues around the world as better players, but ultimately the West Indies don't win as a team.
Mm.
Is that a risk?
Look, I think every test playing nation has to grapple with that issue. Again, I don't think it's an issue that's unique to the West Indies.
No, I think it's true. Yeah.
So so yes and no. I think if you produce better cricket wickets where kids can go out and score 200 against good bowling attacks if they apply themselves, where they get opportunities to play Test cricket for the West Indies and line themselves up against a legacy of West Indian batsmanship and current international batsmen, and get paid properly for it, you are likely to continue to see young people want to play Test cricket.
Yeah,
it's just not a compelling proposition at the moment, and I'm sure we'd both agree. If I was a young man in the West Indies right now, you gave me the chance to play in 3 international T20 leagues and earn 3 or 4 times the amount I would earn playing for the West Indies and getting taught a lesson every week.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a no-brainer, right? So
there's probably no, it's no coincidence that India as a team across all of the formats has got better since the IPL started. And a criticism towards these franchise leagues was it's just about money. Players won't bother playing Test cricket, but India has proved actually that they produce some really. I mean, Rishabh Pant wouldn't exist if it wasn't for the IPL. So do you think? And what I think India has done well, and you don't find me praising, as you know, the BCCI that often, is that they've actually used the money well. They pay their players properly. There's no need for. I remember, Dhoni when Gary Kirsten was the coach of the West of India, saying that Dhoni used to basically every day that he wasn't playing cricket, he used to do a commercial thing because they weren't being paid properly in those days, but now they are. And also, the BCCI has used some of the money for infrastructure, better pitches, better stadia, etc., etc. Do you now with the CPL? Playing a prominent role in the Caribbean cricketing sort of calendar, if you like. Is there a hope that actually that's going to bring about the various things that you've asked for or you've suggested in the last sort of 20 minutes or so?
Well, look, a couple of things. I don't want to say this too loud, although I realise I'm on a podcast, but for me, Alan Stanford was the best thing that happened to West Indies cricket in my lifetime, probably my adult lifetime.
That's a whole new podcast by itself.
Right, so we'll leave that where it is.
Alan Stanford,
we'll leave that where it is because we could go down a real rabbit hole with that one. But I think, look, what's happened in Test cricket, I feel, as a result of the Indian Premier League primarily, but then also the emergence of these other T20 leagues, is that it's changed Test cricket.
Yeah.
Test cricket is a different product now than it was pre-IPL.
Yeah.
That's why you now have a format that players like Rishabh Pant and teams like England with, Bazball, which I hate hearing, but because it's kind of got faddy type connotations. It's not a fad. This is the way Test cricket is generally played these days.
100%, yeah.
So I think the real positive influence of T20 cricket has been that it's made Test cricket a more dynamic product. And then it becomes a much easier sell, both to audiences and to players. So should that translate into from Indian Premier League into Indian Test cricket and therefore from CPL into West Indian Test cricket? Absolutely should.
Mm-hmm.
But again, someone's got to make smart long-term decisions about the best interests of the game in the West Indies in order for that to happen, right? So we'll come back to administration.
And that's the final point I wanted to finish on. With some other countries, the Americans come to mind. The ICC has sent in, people from their administration to go and sort out that administration, if you like, not successfully, but they've given it a go. Do you think then the West Indies Cricket Board would benefit from somebody? I mean, Johnny was there for a long time, right? Johnny Grave, and but he's a cricket administrator, a very good one. But you think the West Indies Cricket Board could do with somebody from outside of both the region and cricket to run it like a business and use that money to improve, the next sort of 10 years or so, as you said?
It's a good question.
I've asked one at last after 23 minutes. That's good going.
Well, look, let's go back to the beginning of this conversation. You said that you don't think the world needs a strong West Indies cricket team anymore, right?
They're not as relevant as they used to be.
Yeah, everybody who loves the game of cricket and roughly of our generation, that brings a tear to our eyes to see or hear somebody say that.
Clickbait, mate, it's a great thing.
It may be true. The reality is that we may have to come to terms with the fact that we won't have a West Indies cricket team playing international Test cricket anymore.
Yeah.
So, and I think Test cricket will survive, right?
Yeah.
But is it a weaker product when you lose something as iconic as a West Indian cricket team from the scene? Potentially, yes. I think, yeah. Not this current West Indies cricket team, but the concept of West Indian cricket.
Is it not the same as Preston North End, for example, one of the founders of the Football League, not playing in the Premier League?
No, because let's be honest. How many interesting Test match lineups do we see these days, right? If there were 15 really interesting Test playing nations, that meant that the world had moved on past the West Indies, then I think you'd have an argument. But we don't, right?
And frankly,
all we have are England, Australia, and the West Indies.
Yeah.
And that's a poor product in my view.
And frankly, you'd rather go to Barbados than Preston.
I've never been to Barbados. I have been to Preston. I'll let you know once I've been.
Well, I'm the other way around. I've not been to Preston, but I've been to Barbados. So I know where I would be. Mate, listen, I always say 15 to 20 minutes, and I'm not achieved it yet because, the conversation I have with people is so good, and there's always some great views on there. But it's your weekend, isn't it? It never used to be, but it is a Friday, and have a good one. And thanks for coming on Close of Play, Damian Brandy, and I will chat to you soon.
Appreciate it, Sanj. Thanks, mate. Speak soon.